From the grand lobby of Saginaw's former post office, where history was once stamped, sorted, and sent on its way, comes a show about the people who keep the Castle Museum running like a well-oiled machine. Welcome to Postscript, the podcast that delivers the stories behind the exhibits, the laughter behind the scenes, and the passionate folks who keep this historic landmark buzzing. Today we'll be talking with castle archaeologist Jeffrey Sommer, who spends most of his time either out in the field or down in the basement. Let's see what Jeff is up to. All right, well, we're here today with the Castle Museum's very own archaeologist, Jeff Sommer, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what he does in the basement and out in the field.
And I'm Jen Vanette. I'm outreach coordinator, just here for the conversation.
Very good. So, Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do here at the museum?
Well, I'm the curator of archaeology, so I do all things related to archaeology.
Okay, so yeah.
Right.
Let's explain.
I can expand on that a little. So, I mean, that's sort of my main role is to take care of the archaeological collections here. And so we've got things that have been donated over the years. They could be farm collections. They could be projects that other institutions have worked on, in some cases even. And then there's lots of collections that we've generated through our own fieldwork, the research that we do here. So I have to take care of all that, make sure it's all organized and in good condition and accessible if other people want to see it. So that's the main part of my job.
Okay.
The other thing is, we aren't just collecting artifacts to have here for ourselves to play with, to look at, right? So we have to, we want to share what we have here. We want to put it on exhibit sometimes. And so sometimes we're working on actually putting exhibits together. We've done that recently here. Sometimes we don't have the opportunity for an exhibit in any particular way, but we want to talk about what we found. And so we do presentations. Sometimes we've done lunch and learn presentations. Sometimes we do presentations for the local archaeology groups. We've done things for groups all over the county, really. When people want to talk about archaeology, they call us up and we go talk about it.
Okay. So let's take one step back, though.
Sure.
For everyone who might not know, I mean, everybody's heard the term archaeology, but what do you mean when you say archaeology and when you talk about field work? What is that?
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about archaeology as being different than just regular history, right? So historians, you're both historians. When you study the past, you're looking at documents primarily. It might be photographs, it might be maps, it might be written documents. So archaeologists use all of that stuff in some ways, but we also look at the stuff people used and left behind, the material culture, we call it. So it's just the everyday objects. It's it's a lot of times it's the garbage that's left behind. But it's the stuff that people use in their everyday lives that you can kind of look at those pieces and, they're all like puzzle pieces and can put them together and get a sense of what people were doing in different locations in the past. And while sometimes historians have the advantage of they have sort of detailed accounts of what happened.
It's super helpful.
It's super helpful, except we all know that, there's this thing called propaganda and, people don't always tell exact, they try to put the best face on things, right? And then there's a lot that happens in the world that it's just the everyday occurrences that at the time don't seem significant, that people don't think is worth writing about. So we don't have any record of a lot of times what average people were doing in different locations. And so archaeology is sometimes the only view of that, right? It's the only way we can get to what the everyday people were doing in societies. And then there's the fact that for, most of human history, there are no written documents. We don't have photographs. We don't have those kinds of things. So there may be oral histories that we can, look to for some insights into the past, into those sort of the deeper past. But oftentimes it's just the archaeological record. It's just the traces that we can find, things that were left behind. So that's kind of what how we differentiate archaeology from history. There was a second part of your question, and I already forgot what it was.
Oh, fieldwork.
Oh, fieldwork.
What does that even mean?
Sure. So fieldwork is basically the process of finding those bits, those, pieces of material culture that are in the ground or on the ground, and it may be digging holes. It may be walking across fields and just looking for stuff on the surface. A lot of times it's digging shovel tests, we call it. So we just have a sort of standardized way of, putting a grid across the landscape and digging a hole every 10 meters or so and seeing what we find.
Catherine looks really excited about this.
We've got to get you out there digging holes. You'll be hooked for sure.
I mean, it all sounds very important, but all I heard is that you dig up garbage, so you're kind of like the raccoon of the museum.
Ooh, new mascot.
Right. I mean, we prefer to think of ourselves as woodchucks.
Oh, okay. All right.
Raccoons are fine.
That garbage connection. But
The garbage connection for sure, but digging the holes is where it's at. Garbage is funny, right? But that is what people used every day.
Right.
It's the stuff that can give us the best picture of what people were doing, and so maybe it doesn't sound glamorous. It really is.
I mean, your happy place is out in holes, right?
That's actually true for sure. We work in lots of different areas. Sometimes we're in the city. We've worked at places right downtown here in Saginaw, or next to busy roads. We did a project right on the edge of M46 a few years ago. But most of our field work over the last, since I've been here, has been out in the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge, and it's just a fabulous place to work. One, there's right now it kind of looks like a wooded area where nothing much has ever happened. But the fact is that for thousands of years, people have been out there doing things, and we've just found an incredible archaeological record from. The things that we've found out there probably go back 3,000 or 4,000 years, but right up into the modern day, obviously people are still out there. So and then the setting, of course, is kind of idyllic out there, and birds chirping and all of that. So it's a great place to work.
what's the snake population like out there?
It's not as high as I'd like it to be, but we do occasionally find snakes in the excavation units, but we just kind of help them on their way, and it's fine. It's good. We share the space.
Good to hear. Good to hear. What's the most interesting? Now, interesting to like normal people. Thing that you found out there.
So I get this question a lot, or like, what's your favorite artifact you found, right? It's kind of the same. That's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Sure.
So it's not an artifact, archaeologists have this, I guess there's the popular view of archaeologists out there treasure hunting or trying to find the really cool artifacts that's not what we're doing at all, right? We're looking for information.
Well, I'm out then. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Right. So no, we're interested in information, and so we love to find really fancy, cool artifacts. We're people too. Some of us are almost normal people, but it's what we can learn just as much from a broken artifact and sometimes more from a broken artifact than we can from some pristine, beautiful piece of art, right? Because we can learn how. The object may have been used, or if it was broken, why did it break? And so we can start learning more about these things that we found. And we're talking about trash before. My favorite thing to find is actually a trash pit, right? And so at one of the sites that we worked at out in the wildlife refuge, we found several of them. They're trash pits from probably around 1400, 1600, somewhere in that time frame. Actually, from several periods within that time frame. But some of these pits are just filled with animal bones and plant remains, and the dinner people were had over. It's hard to say actually how long these pits were being used, but there's things from multiple seasons of occupation. So we find fish in those that were spawning in the spring. So we find like suckers and sturgeon and things like that. Then we find charred nutshells that would have only been available in the fall. So these are the kind of things that can really start to tell us a lot about the people who were out there, when they were out there, what the environment was like. So it's, it gets beyond just exact what were the people doing, but what was the area like where they were living. And so finding that kind of situation is what's really interesting to me. That's my favorite. So a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. No, but that was interesting because it was making me think about so with archaeology, you're really looking for that human past,
Mm-hmm.
but with what you just listed, with what you were finding, you have to know a lot about the natural world, about, because of how people use things, but you're going to have to be able to identify those animal remains, those plant remains, and things like that. So you kind of have to know a lot of science on top of knowing.
Yeah, that's right.
Historical stuff that Catherine.
Right, and I mean that brings up another point that the best archaeology is always multidisciplinary because it's true. There's so much to learn, there's so much to know, and one person can't know everything about all of that stuff. So you kind of have to, like for me, I kind of have to know enough to know what's really interesting and what questions can be answered. With the stuff we find, and then you just have to know the right people to talk to ask. Can you identify this plant remain that we found? And we have a really good example of that on one of the sites we worked at. We found some seeds there, and I'll throw out the term. Chenopodium is the name of the plant, and it's a common name might be lamb's quarter or something like this. But it's a plant that was domesticated in North America. It had been domesticated for thousands of years. But it's also a native plant, so there's the non-domesticated varieties of it as well. And that shows, you can find it out in your garden today. It just grows up as a weed everywhere, right? But we found some of the seeds in one of these trash pits that, I could identify them that they were seeds, right? But I could send them to a paleoethnobotanist, somebody who specializes in this, and she was able to look at them more closely and get, scanning electron microscopy, get nice detailed pictures of them, and just based on the minute detail, and I can't even tell you what they are, but the minute details of these seeds, she could tell that they were not the wild type. They were not exactly the domesticated type that's known from further south, but it's kind of somewhere in between. And so that gives us a really kind of cool bit of information. Folks in this area were probably growing this plant intentionally. And it wasn't the wild type. It's not just something that happened to fall into the pit, right? It's something they were growing and using. And it's probably just a local domesticated variety of this plant. But it's one of the things that we wouldn't have been able to tell without actually consulting an expert in that part of the field.
Cool. And speaking of expertise, I guess we should maybe even mention that you're kind of the only archaeologist in this area, right? Professional archaeologists working.
Yeah, some of the universities have, in Michigan certainly have other archaeologists, but in Saginaw County, I think I'm probably the only one. There's
He's certainly the most famous one, anyway.
Well, absolutely.
Love those YouTube videos.
Right. No, so there are certainly lots of archaeologists have worked and continue to work in Saginaw, but as the sort of local, my home ground kind of thing. Yeah, I think I'm probably the only one here.
All right. So now my burning question is pop culture.
You got any questions?
Jeff famously loves pop culture. No, but how do you feel about what pop culture does with archaeology? Does it amuse you? Does it annoy you? You could talk about Taylor Swift if you'd rather, but
I'll not have a lot to say. So archaeology and pop culture is kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's always great to get people interested in archaeology and history in the past and learning about it. But, the other side of that is they always do it wrong, and it's never a real reflection of what archaeologists actually do, right? We're not out treasure hunting. We already talked about this a little bit, right? We're looking for information, like gold statues or whatever it is. We hardly ever use whips, and hardly ever, right?
But ever.
Right. So the Indiana Jones thing is not a real close, parallel to what I do anyway. But I like a good movie too, so it's not all bad.
Disappointing.
Right.
Disappointing. Well, so you like trash pits.
I do.
You're the raccoon of the museum. What do you do down there in the basement?
So, I mean, that's a good question.
What are you doing down there?
So what we're doing is taking care of all the artifacts we find during our excavations, right? So, like, I mean, I can make up a figure. Every hour in the field is like generates 2 or 3 hours of lab work. I mean, there's a lot to do with all the artifacts that we find and bring back. They have to be cleaned and organized and cataloged and analyzed, and and then we photograph and write up whatever we learn about them. So all of that takes time. So there's that. And then there's also non-archaeology parts of my job. We, as you guys know, we're a small staff here, and so we're always there are times when it's an all hands on deck sort of situation where we're doing if we're tearing down an exhibit or putting up a new exhibit or whatever it is, we all pitch in and help each other when the occasions arise. So there's that, and then just dealing with donated collections. They all have to be processed and analyzed in the same way that the things that we generate do. So that kind of stuff.
So donated collections is interesting.
Okay.
So like when I was a kid, I grew up next to a creek. I could on occasion find arrowheads lying around.
Sure.
But this is like a big thing for some people to find these things. So what do you do when somebody brings in, like, here's a bunch of random stuff I've collected?
Right. So, well, it kind of depends on what their intention is. If they want to donate it, then there's a whole process to accepting a collection like that. A lot of times people just bring things in, they want to know about it, right? And so we look at it, and there's a lot of artifacts, a lot of the arrowheads that people would bring in or that you might find. We can tell when they were used approximately, how old they are, what they're made out of. We sometimes find things made out of, stone tools made out of materials that originated in Ohio or Illinois or something like that. And so we can kind of start piecing together the stories that those collections can tell. We always sort of use it as an opportunity to educate people about the importance of another term, provenience, of exactly where things were found. So these things you found by a creek, that where they were found, right? They're only useful for an archaeological perspective if you know exactly where artifacts were found, what things were found together, and then that information has to be saved, right? Because you're someday going to pass those on to your kid or to whoever. They're not going to have that memory. They don't know where you found them, right? And so we have to we try to always let people know that you have to record exactly where you find them. You don't have to write on the artifacts, but you can have a map with an X on it. Sometimes X marks the spot. Put an X where you found it, and keep that map with your artifacts. Right?
It is. There's like your
right.
personal treasure.
Right. Right. And then there's another option that we let people know that the state of Michigan maintains a list of all archaeological sites, and so they can, if they want to, they can, and I can help with this, send that information, the location information, and what they found, the information about what they found into the state, and get an official state site number, and then they can keep that number with the artifacts, and then that's just a way to kind of always keep that information together, and so. And again, it's always an optional thing. People don't need to do that, but we always encourage them to because, like I say, the archaeological value of collections kind of ends if you don't know where the things are from. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, it happens all the time. People bring in an old farm collection, things that their grandparents may have picked up, and it's just all this really beautiful stuff, and they're just pretty rocks if we don't know where they're from. And so it's and it's hard, but so we do our best to educate people and let them know how they can add to the regional archaeological record. And for some people, they find that to be really cool and a great thing to do. Other people, not so much.
Just gonna put this back on my shelf.
Right, well, and it's their stuff. I guess that's fine too.
There you go.
I don't know. I mean, He always seems like he's never around, but now he's making it sound like he's actually doing work all the
I
time.
know. I'm shocked.
No, I don't just nap down there.
Pretty face.
Right. Exactly.
So what's your favorite part about working here at the Castle Museum?
I think the best part about there's a lot of different levels. One is, I'm a local guy. I grew up in Saginaw. Well, I grew up in Bridgeport, Saginaw County. So, I get to work and learn about the history of the place that I call my home. So that's I think to me the sort of the real, and this is one of the things I love about history and archaeology. It gives you this sense of place. It gives you this sense of you're part of this long tradition, whether you've been here, decades or years. I mean, once you're here, and you learn about the past, what they're doing, and to me, that's meaningful to me, and so I like that part of it. But then working at the museum itself, you got it's the coworkers for sure. But but there is something nice about you work with these people that are all here because they love history, they love the past, and they all love garbage in a way, and raccoons. So,
Of course.
right. Yeah. So so we're all kind of working towards this common goal of learning the stories of our location, learning the stories of the people who are here and have been here in the past, and then sharing that with the folks in the community.
Oh, I'm inspired.
Yeah, definitely. That was a much better answer than I would have. I would have been like, it's a castle. It's great.
Well, there's the cat. It's a cool building too, right?
Very good.
Right.
It is pretty cool.
Well, what do you think, Jen? Any other questions for our friend here?
I think we should release him.
It
been a
sounds
good
like he's got
sport.
important work to do.
There's always more to do. There are always more artifacts to wash, for sure.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining us for our little coffee talk here today. And,
Well, you're welcome.
have fun digging up that garbage.
Well, you guys have to come out in the field with me sometime and really learn what it's all about.
It's on our list.
I mean, as long as there's snake removal before I get there.
Still escort
Can't make any promises.
This is Postscript.